I've been anticipating this day for a couple months now, and I woke up this morning super excited about the idea of coming up here and sharing some of my climate change comedy routine with all of you folks. But I have to confess that it's with a very heavy heart that I am here. I woke up this morning and I was eating breakfast and I got a surprise phone call from God. And she told me that Earth had decided to give up her treatment for climate change and check into hospice care. And I was like, no, God, tell me this isn't true. I mean, many of us were just getting ready to help her. And some of us had given up plastic drinking straws. And I know a lot more people would take the bus or walk to work if they just knew how serious this was. And what about the Green New Deal in Congress? I mean, with one of your miracles, that has a chance of passing at least the House, doesn't it? And God said, I'm sorry. She's made up her mind, and at this point, all we can do is support that decision. And I was like, God, no! You've got to remind her. We can't live without her. She can't give up. And God said, remember, calling hospice is not giving up. It's taking charge. Then my phone dropped the call, and as you know, God has a private number, and I couldn't call her back to get details. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, oh my God, this changes everything. I'm going to have to redo my entire set list for this afternoon's performance. So now, if things seem a little choppy, you'll know why. When Andy asked me to participate in this afternoon's program, she suggested that you all might want to know a little bit more about why I felt called to use comedy to address such a serious issue as climate change. And the short answer is, I've always loved the word oxymoron. And I thought, it would be really cool to be one. And I'm encouraged so far. Many of my friends and family have assured me that I'm halfway to my goal without even trying. A couple of years ago, my wife and I gave up closed our green dry cleaning business to pursue other challenges. And I didn't actually have one lined up. So I went back to doing carpentry, which I had fallen back on many times in my life. Pretty much every time my attempts at a professional career didn't work out. And we lived for 20 years together without owning two vehicles. We only had one car, and I really didn't want to buy another vehicle. And so I committed to taking jobs that were close enough to where we lived so that I could ride the bus or truck pool or ride my bike to work. And sadly, I think I'm probably the only carpenter in Maine who rides a bike to work who doesn't have an OUI suspension. I was working on a job recently, and I was there all alone, and the guy who installs the carpet showed up, and we got chatting, you know, where do you live, what do you like to do, and then he said, how do you get to work? Because there weren't any other vehicles in the driveway. And I said, I take the bus and ride my bike. And he's like, how do you do that? And the evangelical me came right out, and I was like, it's easy. I just ride to the bus stop in the morning, and then there's a rack on the bus, and I put my bike on that, and then I ride to the bus to the stop near here, and then from there I ride the rest of the way. And it's like, no, that's not what I meant. How do you get your tools here? I was like, what, you mean the table saw and the chop saw and the compressor? That's what a good backpack's for. And he looked at me and he's like, I think just to test if I wasn't completely insane, he said, how about those Patriots? I was in the parking lot of Amazon Foods recently, and I ran into a friend of mine who I hadn't seen for a while, and we got catching up, you know. Of course, eventually, the conversation led to climate change, and he just went off on this rant, and he was like, we're never going to solve this problem because Americans are too fat and lazy and self-centered to ever give up their cars. And before I could respond, he drove off. I was at a 350.org rally recently. It was last fall, actually, and I don't know, probably some of you have been to those. For anyone who hasn't, this is where people drive to a central location and then parade around with banners saying no more fossil fuels. And it's an irony of how we have to fight this thing. I had this friend I met at that rally. We carpooled for quite a few years to school, our kids to school together, and he was all excited. He came up to me and he's like, I finally bit the battery, so to speak, and I bought a Tesla. And my reaction was like, wow, that's I can't get enthusiastic about it. I know I probably should, but to me, I look at that situation and it's kind of the same way I look at somebody who's just gotten bariatric bypass surgery. I'm like, you know, a lot of good could come from this, but there are also a lot of problems that it doesn't address, and there's a few that it actually creates. But he was enthusiastic, and so he's going on about the problem with it for him is that his PV array on his net zero home isn't big enough to generate enough energy for all his household needs and to power his car completely. And he didn't have any more room on his roof, and Maine's solar farm law is too restrictive, so he couldn't get into a solar farm, and he didn't have any room in the yard for any more panels. And I said, geez, that sounds stressful. I guess your only choice is to drive less. He was like, well, I would if there was better public transit. And I'm like, I didn't say this to him, but I was like, come on. Tesla is to cars what orgasm is to sex. And you're trying to tell me that you are this far from climax, and you're going to be like, hey honey, I'm sorry to leave it right there, but I got a bus to catch. I'll be home tonight though, maybe a little late. Just don't believe it. You know, in fact, if I had a bus pass for every time I've heard somebody who's addicted to cars tell me that they would give it up if there was better public transit, I could get where I don't need to go, arrive there late, for free for the rest of my life. I do think public transit needs to be improved, but if you're going to bitch about how pathetic it is, at least do it on the bus, where you've got a legitimate reason to complain. And people are pretty accustomed to hearing somebody muttering unintelligibly in the back. I wrote a little song that I want to sing for you. I'm not sure this mic's going to handle it, so I might not use it, but I have to say in advance that I owe some apologies to Janis Joplin and all of you on this one. Although I think she might have liked this modern version of her anti-consumer ballad. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Tesla sedan? My friends all drive a Prius, I must outdo them. I'll be saving the planet with every full charge. Oh Lord, put a Tesla in my garage. Oh Lord, won't you buy me an iPhone 28? My Model 27 is so out of date. I need it to Facebook with my virtual friends. Oh Lord, on an iPhone, my life depends. Oh Lord, won't you buy me an upgrade to Prime? Their fast and free delivery brings my goods on time. And with my phone phone and PayPal, I can buy it all. Oh Lord, give me Amazon to avoid the old mall. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Tesla sedan? My friends all drive a Prius, I must outdo them. I'll be saving the planet with every full charge. Oh Lord, put a Tesla in my garage.